everyone, and welcome back to Don't Open That Door. I am Justin, the talent.
I'm Nico, and my main goal is to blow up and then act like I don't know nobody.
And I'm Dan, the recording studio engineer.
Wait, how does that fucking work?
They go to a recording studio.
Oh, yeah, they do.
The whole premise is he goes there.
Yeah, no, they do. They do. Wow, yeah, okay.
Well, if you were extremely perceptive and perhaps psychic, you'd be able to tell what we're talking about. But if you're not...
No, you fucking wouldn't. There is no way.
So, Dan, this is a special episode of DOTD. What are we doing different today, Dan?
Instead of doing a movie or even a TV show like we just started to. A movie. This is our first time doing a comic book, a graphic novel, actually.
Okay,
My brother, who is an avid listener, shout out to you, Steve. He actually
Shout out to the legend.
gifted us a copy of a graphic novel called Severed. So this is our first graphic novel.
Indeed, shout outs to Steve the Legend. So this one was brought to us by Scott Snyder, Scot Tuft, and Attila Futaki. And as Dan said, this is Severed. So this story begins with an older man called Jack Garrison, and he's missing an arm. One day
he just can't find it.
If only. The truth is much worse. One day he receives a letter in the mail that, disturbs him a lot. And he slowly starts to go over, the story of how he lost his arm and why that letter was so disturbing to him. So we do a little bit of a time skip, right, Nico? I mean, we go back to 1916, right?
Yeah, and I mean, this is the point at which the story really sort of like emphasizes the whole theme of just how he lost an arm. Sometimes the most important thing you can do is to lend someone a hand. So we jump back to 1916. Jack is a 12-year-old who lives with his mother, only she's not his real mom. Turns out that Jack was, an orphan when he was a baby and was adopted, which is frankly awesome. Adoption's great. Recently, though, he's been corresponding with his birth father, who is a musician just like Jack. And he invites Jack to go meet him in Chi-City, Chicago. One night, though, while his mother is asleep, Jack just dipsets and leaves to go find his dad.
But, back then, Dan, especially, it wasn't so easy to make your way across this country. So how does Jack do that? What does he do?
He decides to stow away on a train, and he ends up getting caught by, I don't remember exactly who, like the conductor, engineer, somebody on the train, police, somebody, I can't remember.
Yeah.
So there he meets another person named Sam, who is actually a young woman who disguises herself as a boy. So the two end up making it to Chicago, and Sam's father, turns out, has already left for Mississippi. So Sam and Jack decide to use Jack's musical talents, playing the fiddle, to make enough money to make it over to Mississippi and find Jack's father. Unfortunately, this is where they end up starting to run into a monster.
And a monster indeed. The two protagonists run into a man calling himself Alan Fisher. But in reality, that's just a name and an identity that he took from someone else. We don't ever really find out his real name. But the man calling himself Alan is a cannibal murderer who goes by many names. His MO, though, is to lure in children and younger adults, and then he eats them. He particularly likes eating people that have big dreams. So Jack, he innately trusts Alan, but Sam is a little bit more wise and does not immediately trust him. Sam tries to find out the truth about Alan, and even tries calling Alan's job, but it actually doesn't work in her favor, and she is caught and killed by Alan. And things just kind of go from bad to worse, because what happens next, Nico?
At that point, Alan tricks Jack and makes him feel that Sam actually was manipulating him, stealing his money and betraying him. So Jack is hurt and then turns even further towards Alan, and together the pair drive down to Mississippi. On the way, though, however, Jack discovers that Alan is in possession of the wallet that he gave to Sam. So he, puts two and two together and then just tries to escape from Alan, realizing what's going on. He escapes into the house that supposedly belongs to his father, but he finds out the horrific truth instead. His father is dead, and he's been corresponding with Alan Fisher this whole time.
Out of the frying pan into the fire type moment, because what happens next, Dan?
So Alan ends up knocking Jack out and tying him up in the basement. And he starts to make preparations to butcher, quite literally, Jack, and even cuts off his arm. But he's interrupted by Jack's mother, who it turns out a while earlier, Sam had sent a letter to detailing where Jack was going. So Jack's mother kind of followed, went towards that way, and she ends up knocking on the door, gets attacked by Alan, but Jack manages to make it upstairs. He kind of escapes his chain somehow, and he saves his mother. Once his mother is safe, Jack gets back inside the house, confronts Alan in the basement, injuring him and setting the house on fire, killing him.
So we then jump back to the present and we actually realize that Alan is still alive. We kind of see him in a crowd of people, and it's also implied that the letter that, Jack got to start the story off was actually sent from Alan. So the story ends with Jack, running through that crowd trying to find him, but, Alan's already gone. And from there, we're really just left with the look of horror on Jack's face as the story ends. So we'll take this from the top. So Dan, unfortunately, there's no audio here for you to tell us about today, but we do have some really interesting artwork. So how do you feel about it? How do you feel about, the artwork and the way everything's laid out here?
I actually really like the artwork personally. I thought it was very detailed. Now, I'm not too much of a comic book reader. I've read a few, but I'm not like that big into it. So this is sort of my, I don't quite want to say first foray into comics, but I'm a novice. I'm an amateur in this sense. So I really like the artwork. I thought it was a really cool, different way to look at horror, I guess. And I'm a huge reader. I'm a very avid reader. So kind of seeing the words and the pictures to help my imagination more than just a book, but not quite as much as a film. There's still some left to the imagination. I thought was really cool.
So Nico, I guess I'm going to give you a little bit of a prompt here. I know one thing about, graphic novels and comics, things like that. It's not just, drawing, it's also inking. What do you think about the artwork in respect to that, and also just kind of your general thoughts?
So the line art, the coloring, the inking, it's all done really, really well. This is an interesting prompt because I now realize this is the first time when we're talking about something that isn't an entirely, visually based media, or like primarily visually based media with film. Anyway, the art style is done realistically. The textures are all very, nothing seems really fantastic or out of the ordinary. And if I had to liken it to a series aesthetic, I think the closest thing I would say would be some sort of maybe American drama set in like the 20s or something, but it looks really, really crisp and really, really nice. I'm definitely not doing it justice here as I normally would, but one thing that I will say about audio actually is that they do imply sound and stuff through the construction of panels, in particular with perspective and text boxes. There are a number of times when something is said that is implied to be quiet because either the font, the text box, or the character's positioning in relation to the perspective of the greater frame, it is seen as, more minimized and smaller. And usually when something is in more of the foreground, we can take it to be almost thinking of it as, cinematically, we are closer to that instance. So it's, quote, louder and more present for us.
Okay. And I guess, from my perspective, I would say that I really dug the art here. It took me just a little bit to kind of get used to it. But once I was, really in it and the story really started going for me, I thought it was awesome. And again, it is nice because to me, the art is also very good at reflecting the time period that they're in.
Yeah.
That's
what I was trying to say.
I don't really even know how to, say that. Like I could try, but it wouldn't sound very nice. But like, I don't really know how to say it, but it does such a good job of like reflecting everything that's going on. And at the same time, like it's never.
I think I've got an idea of how to say that.
Okay.
Sorry to interrupt, but we do get some context pretty earlier on into the time period. So the future point is during the 60s, I believe it was. Or rather, the present is in the 60s when, Jack receives a letter, and then in the sort of like the second page, it cuts to 40 years earlier. So if we think about that time in American history, we've got, Great Depression, obviously, things like Dust Bowl, and just coming out of the more like official transition from like the Reconstruction. It was certainly a more gritty, dirty, troubled time, I would say. And I think that the tone of the pieces, or sorry, the panels, the coloration, the lighting, all reflects that, just similarly to how it appears in cinema.
Yeah, I was gonna say, because for the coloration, we don't ever really see any real, truly bright, happy scenes.
No.
Except for at the very start, it's bright. Again, this is in the future where we're supposed to be feeling safer. Now, kind of following this thread here, and Dan, you kind of hinted at it at the start, we typically review movies and shows on this podcast. So maybe what would you say are some of the key takeaways or differences in the mediums, between comics and movies? Where do we find differences?
So, one thing when I started reading this, I was talking to my brother about it, and he actually brought up a really good point. He mentioned that he looks into things like when he reads comics, what is this comic doing differently that can't be done in a different medium, like a movie or TV show or something like that? And one of the main ones is the artwork and sort of how the panels are laid out. So ever since he mentioned that, and I'm really glad he did, I kind of read into that a little bit more than I was the first handful of pages that I read before that. So things like showing, and again, I know we've talked on the podcast about like films showing more so than straight up telling. So there's a lot of symbolism in this and foreshadowing that I think we might talk about later. So for instance, there's times where like
there's a lot of foreshadowing. Pretty fucking direct about it, actually.
A lot of it is, yeah. But there's also times where like, they're riding in the car and the panel is split in between. Alan might be talking about how you can't trust everybody and everybody that you meet, and the panel is split down the middle of his face. So, kind of symbolizing
love that point.
Symbolizing like a two-faced relationship, kind of a two-faced person. Or there's a part that was really cool, I thought, where when Jack ends up, at one point he takes out a knife and cuts Alan, and on the page there's an actual not an actual cut, but like it cuts through a bunch of panels, and the panels are shaped around that cut. And, it doesn't follow like a typical square rectangle kind of shape at all. And I thought that was really cool. So I think the paneling or the panel layout is a big thing that can be very subtle, but also you can read into and take a lot of meaning from.
For sure. And I mean, we had kind of discussed a little bit, and that is true. I think sometimes, especially because it's been a while since I've really dug into, like American style comics. And I do think that was really awesome. So, Nico, aside from what Dan was talking about, do you have any other differences, maybe?
I do. And this is a particular point where I get to sort of indulge for a second because I actually teach about graphic novels in my classes. One of my favorite things about graphic novels that you just don't get in film is actually, believe it or not, due to, the linear nature of time, you see.
Okay.
So in a film or, show or whatever, everything you're seeing is, constant, fluid. We don't have a cut from moment to moment. But with the graphic novel and comics, there's one key factor: the page turn. There is so much opportunity with the turn of a page being, the first thing that you see after having this scene in your mind, this sort of just static image. You see something can be, incredibly shocking or viscerally different depending on the point in the narrative. And there's a bunch of examples of these used to great effect in Severed. One in particular, in chapter 5, there is one that isn't really too profound, but it's just a scene where Alan is attacking someone, and we cut from a perspective of Alan's face to just fucking scalping someone, and it zooms right into his forehead, which is a strangely visceral thing to experience while reading something, and that was interesting to see. But perhaps my favorite one is the first time, I can't remember which chapter it is, but the very first time that we see Alan's teeth. his real teeth. There is a turn where it's the reveal, and he looks absolutely feral and savage and terrifying, completely different from how there's like a jump scare. This is, I think it works better than jump scares, frankly.
So it's interesting that you mentioned jump scares, because what I was going to say was actually somewhat relating to that. And you're absolutely right, by the way, when it comes to the whole, being able to turn the page and what's next on that page. And it's true, hearing you talk about it, it definitely does influence the reader, because your mind is in one place, then you turn the page and you could be somewhere else completely. But from my perspective, I thought that one of the biggest differences is in the ways that they have to build tension, much like you were already describing. For a graphic novel or a comic, you really have to turn the page, keep turning the page, keep turning the page. That is how you build the tension. And as far as a jump scare goes, there's really no such thing, not quite in the same way. Because, and this actually takes me back to way earlier conversations, Nico, that you and I used to have. Like, I'm talking like 8 years ago and shit. But
oh, wow.
Being in control of your horror is much different from having the horror done to you. As when you're watching a movie, the horror is done to you. And when you're reading, like a graphic novel, yes, you're not telling the story, but you're turning the page.
You're a little more involved in it, yeah.
Exactly. So you kind of like ready yourself, then you turn the page and whatever happens, So
like you can pause when you're reading, like, oh fuck, I don't know if I'm ready for this yet. Where like if it was a movie or TV, well, tough luck, buddy.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is like the pacing is not given to you. You are in control of the pacing. So, and granted, yes, okay, full disclosure, I guess you could pause your movie, but
let's not get too meta here, because we could go off for a while on that thread.
But no, I mean, like, I enjoy being in control of the pacing, and I think
definitely
it's so linked to the tension that it's awesome. But let's kind of change pages here and talk about Alan. So, what is Alan? There are references kind of,
He's one of the street sharks, bro. He's fucking jawsome.
Shut the fuck
pretty
up.
jawsome, yeah.
He is pretty jawsome.
There are references scattered throughout the comic, really. He's one time he gets asked, well, what's your occupation? And he goes, oh, I've been doing this since the beginning of time. And we take these as jokes. Well, I didn't, because I'm a very keen and observant listener. But there are things that he says, and they're like passing jokes, but they're not. Apparently, he might very well be immortal. He's clearly not human. And
yeah, right.
Just so we can tell the audience directly, Alan carries around a pair of false teeth to make his mouth seem normal. But when he removes them, he's got these jagged, as Nico said so eloquently, street shark-esque chompers. So theories, guys. I'll start with you, Dan, because I'm sure you've studied up on the ancient origins.
Of street sharks?
Yes. What could Alan be aside from a street shark?
I mean, I don't know if he's like a particular thing. I just kind of took him to be some sort of demon, might be a little bit too intense, I guess, but some sort of monster. And obviously, like we mentioned, he eats people. I think he gets his euphoria or his high from eating people, and not only his sustenance, but his reason to live, I guess. So I think he's just some sort of monster, maybe demon type thing that just goes around fucking eating people.
True enough. Nico, you posited that he could be a shark of the street variety, but do we have anything else that he could be?
So this is one where I am just going to state this before I even or give this disclaimer before I even move forward. I am probably wrong about this, and I'm basing this entirely on a video game.
Okay.
But you remember the Wendigos in Until Dawn?
Yes.
So they were these, to those of you who haven't played, one, you really should, it's fantastic. But, and maybe we'll cover it on the pod at some point. They were these humans who were sort of like corrupted through cannibalism, and they had these very strange mutations that occurred throughout their body. Their skin got hard as bone, their teeth became sharp like, well, sharks. And I am going to be honest, I do not know to what extent that is based in folklore or, tradition, and to what extent that was creative license. But I think that was, I think that was the very first thing that I thought of personally. And I know that some of the themes are consistent across, the different stories, but yeah, no, the Wendigo came to mind for me.
Okay. I mean, yeah, I guess there's, and much like we've kind of hinted at here, there is no direct answer we're given. We don't get
There
a tone
really isn't.
at the end where it's like, by the way, like check your journal. Alan was, a banshee. Like, no, there is no answer there. But it does, it does leave something because it does have a little bit of mysteriousness behind it. But, Nico, we're going to continue speaking with you here. Foreshadowing.
Oh.
So this comic, this graphic novel, obviously has a lot of foreshadowing that goes on. I'm gonna lead with perhaps my favorite piece, which is there's a dinner scene, and we cover a lot of dinner scenes on this podcast, by the way.
We really do. Shout out to you, Miles.
Shout out to Miles Doliak. So this dinner scene here with with Alan, Sam, and Jack. They're all there. They're having dinner together, and Alan is regaling them with stories, and Jack's totally buying into it. Alan tells them about how they would treat the animals really well before they butchered them. They would,
oh yeah,
I think at one time point he mentioned giving them beer, as he's giving Jack beer, and he's talking about like we treat them really well, let them have big dreams, like massage their muscles, just make them really happy, and then you butcher them. And Jack's like, that sounds great. And then Sam's like, maybe not.
My guy.
So that was awesome because he's literally basically telling Jack, Alan is, what he's going to do to him before he even does it. Dan, how about you? Any other kind of scenes of foreshadowing that you can think of?
Biggest ones are from that dinner scene. Even like at the dinner scene, it gets kind of weird where Alan pulls out a big bear trap and tests the trust between Jack and Sam. And who is it? I think Jack puts his hand in the bear trap, and Sam has the pin. And then Alan offers Sam a bunch of money to pull the pin and pull the trigger on that. And of course, she doesn't do it. And then near the end, when Jack is getting away, he ends up setting the bear trap for Alan, and Alan gets caught in it. So even like things not as overtly literature-like isn't the best way to say that, but as
literary, perhaps.
Yeah, literary might be a better word. As deep, I guess, as that. But even just like how Jack fucks him up a little bit. There's some foreshadowing in that too.
And we're gonna, I guess, turn to the master of ceremonies here, Nico. I mean, lay it on me, man.
Yeah, so there's one that I just fucking have to mention. It's like page goddamn 3 or something. We see what's his fuck Alan with this other kid who's not Jack, and the dialogue goes like this: "How'd you get so tough? Me? I was born this way. Behind these pearly whites, I got razor sharp teeth." I'm serious, Freddy. Like. It was just, I don't know if you could even call that foreshadowing necessarily, because it's just like, hey, pay attention, fuckface. This is gonna be important. Kind of like a little Chekhov's gun thing, I guess. But that part just really made me laugh, in addition to the fact that the cover of the graphic novel, has him with his, his pearly white. So I just think it was really funny that they were just really laying into the bit there.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Totally. And I mean, it's funny, Nico, because if that was Chekhov's gun, that's more like Chekhov's rocket launcher pointed directly at you. Like, it's like, all right, fair play. I don't think I can miss that one. And sitting with this theme, because we can all agree that kind of a central theme of this work is Alan's manipulation of younger people. We say younger generally because we don't know the full ages, but it seems at least, Dan. Yeah, Dan, correct me if I'm wrong here. Like Nico said, he goes after the youths, right?
Right.
So do you think something like this could happen today? Without getting too dark here, do we think that somebody could do what Alan is doing? Or
Robert James Kelly?
I mean, yeah, or do we think that we have enough technology and the wherewithal to catch someone like him when people go missing like that?
Sylvester, not James. Was making that one up as we went. His middle name was Sylvester.
I absolutely think it's possible for sure. I mean, I think it happens, unfortunately. They think there's a
Yeah.
lot of, not to get again too dark or anything, but a lot of child trafficking and all sorts of disgusting things. I can definitely see how it happens. I mean, I would like to think it doesn't happen as much in the more busy areas of society, cities and stuff, which I know it does, but there's plenty of places in this country that are slower and not as connected to, I don't want to say the internet, but like social media and just interconnectedness, I guess. So I definitely, people can go missing for a while and disappear, for sure.
No, that's completely
And
true.
it's easy, I think, unfortunately, it's easy to trick people and gain people's trust, especially when you have people who are missing something in their life. So for instance, like Jack never knew his parents, his real parents. Along comes Alan, who acts as a father figure to fill that sort of void in Jack's life. I think that's again, not to get too dark, but easy way to manipulate people.
No, I mean that's certainly true. And I was actually going to agree with you. I think there are a lot of people, particularly, if because he seemed to really target, you're right, children who were missing something or
Hmm.
people who weren't so well connected to
People who had
others.
hopes. They
That
had
too.
more to long
Yeah.
for was the thing.
That
Like he
totally.
was looking for people who were really just trying to do the absolute best they were can. He was never going for like happy Joe Schmo who has a good life, because the ones who are content don't taste as good.
Right.
Correct. He does say that as well. And so Nico, just to get your thought on it, you do agree as well that this could happen today?
Yeah, yeah. Absolutely could. I mean, that is one of the scarier things to even think about when you're reading this, is just
Yeah.
how close this is to not even being a fantasy thing.
Well, that was what I wanted to just mention real quick. When I first read this, I was thinking, I was like, all right, well, this couldn't happen today. But then I thought for a second and I was like, well, actually it does. So
Yeah.
that was definitely a piece of it that, and typically, and this is another kind of, I thought the graphic novel touched upon it in such a way that it made me think more so than, it wasn't just like openly splayed, like, and by the way, in the year 2020, like, no, like it really made you think about it. Like it really did make
Yeah.
you think for a second to be
Right.
like, okay, in this situation, it's a monster, a literal monster doing it. But in today's society, we have monsters all the same doing it
Hmm.
still. So I don't know. I mess with that. I mess with the message of the book.
It's humbling.
And,
It is.
and I think that the monster in this, obviously he was a monster, but I think the point in what he did wasn't very out there. Like we've kind of talked about, is
Right.
very real. Like it's not like because he's immortal or has these crazy teeth or whatever. He's not doing things
Wish I
that
had
normal
teeth
people
in
can't
me.
do.
No,
So I think
certainly
the
true.
the monster is very, very real, even
Yeah.
given his non-human things.
Certainly, certainly. So we're going to shift focus here a little bit and talk about Sam. So Sam is another character. She's basically the second protagonist for a chunk of this graphic novel. Nico, what are your thoughts on Sam? How'd you feel about Sam as a
I'm
character?
so glad you asked, because whoo boy, I have a ton of thoughts, and I'm going to try and keep this as brief as possible.
Okay.
So Sam is a character who is queer coded by virtue of being a female character who is passing as male, and what happens to her character is a kind of a, well, not kind of, is the appearance of a trope that has been, sorry, the fate of her character rather, is the appearance of a trope that has been a profound influence in cinema and just overall literature because of the Hays Code and the Hays Act. That was something that appeared back in the, I believe it was the 50s or something, around the time when cinema was beginning to become the tour de force that it really was. And there were these things called, the Hays Code or Act or something, I can't remember the name. And it said, you cannot show characters who are, anything but the norm, meaning if there was a character who was gay, black, trans, or whatever, for something that is not just normal, they had to be either characters who died, were villains, or met some terrible end. And so this does meet the sort of pattern of that, where we have a character who is coded as queer because of the fact that she is passing as a man for survival reasons and stuff like that. So there's a lot to be said about that, but I really just loved Sam as a character, period. And I think even going on just a very surface level, her death is something that is really sad and really does get you. So I think it is well done, although I'm curious to see what they could have done without killing her.
So that, and we'll lead into that in a second. But Dan, what are your thoughts on Sam?
I really liked her character. I thought she was one of the characters, you know, one of those friends who's down to ride. You know, she's got your back.
Yeah.
And, you know, at first it wasn't like that. At first it was sort of, I don't quite want to say, how can I take advantage of this situation? But she's out to try to make a little bit of money. You know, hey, I'll be your manager and you can busk on the streets and get some money and I'll take a cut, you know, that kind of thing. But after a short period of time, it very much became like a, hey, I care about you as a person kind of thing. And she got his back. And, you know, she proved a couple times that she did. And then right before she goes off and gets killed, there's the little bit of romantic part. There's a actually really beautifully drawn and colored panel where they're sitting on top of like a construction site or something, and they end up kissing. And then, of course, she gets killed. And I was like devastated when she gets killed because I wasn't really expecting her to die like that anyways. So I really liked her character. But as much as I wish that she was alive, I'm glad that they killed her because I think it was just a good writing decision to do that.
It was good writing, yeah. I'm just curious to see what they could have done if they didn't go that route.
So, and this was kind of interesting now as well. So the whole kind of situation with Sam being, you know, because from the start, Sam is a little more hip to the game than Jack is. I mean, Sam literally tells Jack, these people are trying to grift you. Sam even pickpockets.
Oh my God,
Jack
Justin, you're Sam and I'm Jack. That's exactly how this works. There have been so many times where I have been a just phenomenal dumbass for someone as, you know, I think, not to toot my own horn, but like as intelligent as I am. There are times when I have just like rolled complete fucking critical fails on insight, and just like Justin's been there to save me. Like, bro, you know they're fucking with you, right?
So it's actually kind of funny that you say that, because I was going to say that for me, Sam was the character that I actually related to the most, just because Sam is so ready to help Jack. Because, and this is something interesting that the graphic novel doesn't really talk on too much, but I almost kind of feel like for as much as Sam helps Jack, Jack helps Sam. Like, Jack helps Sam feel like
alive.
This is someone who, this is someone who she feels comfortable, you know, like revealing her secret to, because Nico said it earlier, but Sam, you know, dresses as a boy because it's just safer for her to do that. And it's one of those situations where she reveals to him, not instantly, but not too long after they first decide to go on this quest together, that, hey, and she even's like, oh, do you got a problem with girls? And Jack is obviously flustered because he's clearly had no real experience with girls or women. But like, it's just kind of interesting, the exchange between the two of them, because I think also, particularly from media from that era, oftentimes it's the high class girl and then the boy from the wrong side of the tracks. And I think they almost kind of inverted that a little bit with Sam, you know, and they do give a little bit of backstory into her and why she, you know, is a runaway essentially. But it's definitely really interesting. And when it comes to her death, oh man, she did too much. And again,
she's doing too much, wrong,
bro. But she just did. She knew something was wrong, and she tried to do what she thought was right. She went through the logical paths. She went through the logical path in her head. And I actually, believe it or not, I kept hoping that she was alive.
So did I.
Even though there was the whole scene where she's gone and he has the wallet, part of me was just hoping that somehow Sam had gotten away and she was going to come back to save Jack at the very end. Instead of Jack's mother, I thought it was going to be Sam coming back to save Jack. But, and there was also kind of, and this was admittedly a stretch on my part, but in the past slash start of in the future slash the start of the book.
You named all
we
three
see-
time periods.
Well, it's funny because it's the book's future, it's my past, and the start's present. But
Christ.
basically,
You're fucking the whole game up, man.
we see Jack's wife, and
Jack's wife?
she's got like orangish. She's got like orangish hair, and I was really hoping against hope that was.
I thought
Sam.
you were gonna say Lilu from the
But-
Fifth Element.
Funny enough, as the time of recording, that movie was being blasted on Sci-Fi last night. They
No
played that
shit.
shit like 6 times.
Hell yeah.
Funny coincidence. But anyways, yeah, when it comes to Sam's death, I was really, like you guys have said, I was really disheartened by the whole deal. I really, really, really wanted Sam to live. And Nico, what could they have done? I guess for me, the only thing that I think they could have done is really cemented that S rank
Yeah.
support. If Sam had somehow managed to escape from Alan and then come back to save Jack at the end.
Then they would,
But-
get married at the church after defeating Rhea and reclaiming the throne.
There you go, pretty much. But now let's go ahead and talk through what would you do? So I'm interested to hear from you guys, really. Let's go ahead now and say that we're going to have to put ourselves at around, let's say 13.
Yeah, that's fair.
And for purposes of this discussion, I'm a minority, so
Yeah.
that would already throw like
Yeah.
a massive, massive, massive wrench into everything. So we're just going to take that out of the equation for purposes of this. What would you do?
That's fair, man.
It's kind of like the whole, like, wouldn't you like to go back to like the fucking 50s and swing dance with some
Nope.
white people?
Sure
And
fucking
I'm like,
wouldn't.
oh, I could twist again. Wait a second. Nope. I don't think I could.
That is the most white people viewpoint in the entire world.
I don't think I could, sir. So I'm just gonna stay where I'm at. But for purposes of this, everyone just kind of forgets. They can't see me, bro. I'm John Cena in this bitch. But basically, what would you do? So let's say the three of us are stowaways, runaways, and we're looking for Dan.
Yeah.
I pick you.
All right.
It'll be easy to spot.
We're just looking for Dan's trying to find a certain recording studio. And he thinks it's in Chicago, but it's actually in Mississippi. So we get to Chicago and then Alan walks up on us. What would you do? Would you go have dinner with Alan? Would you talk to him at all? Would you entertain him at all?
I would talk to him, but I would not go to his crib. No way. I'm also too, I guess, pessimistic to
True.
think that one person like that has all the answers to my life problems.
Yes.
Like, no way in hell would I believe that, even when I was 13.
I can confirm
So,
that, yes.
Yeah. So I would talk to him and see like what he can do, and I would definitely be open to some amount of help, but I would definitely do it very warily.
All right. Nico, would 1916 Nico accept a ride from Alan to Mississippi?
Fuck no, my parents taught me not to talk to strangers. I'm not a dumbass.
You know, this really, this guy needed McGruff to give him one swift bite in his ass because
Yo, real
this
talk.
man, I can tell you straight up, I will say this is one of those where it's like, well, the easiest thing to say is, well, stranger danger, I'm not fucking with Alan. But let's go ahead and flip it a little bit. Let's say we somehow all, when we had that conversation, Alan offered us all lemonades and Nico drank one. Dan drank one and they both seemed fine. So I drank it. And then after they both drank it, they both fell unconscious. And I was like, well, shit. And I get knocked out too. But we all wind up chained up in Alan's basement in Mississippi. Let's go ahead and almost throw a little curveball here. Who do you think, first off, would you, and let's say, I don't know, Bonner shows up at the house because he's in 1916 too, and he knocks on the door. So do you think, first off the three of us, who's getting their arm chopped off?
Justin.
It's me. It's
Oh.
me, guys.
Yeah.
I was gonna say it's me, isn't it?
Yeah.
My mouth gets me into trouble way too much. I'd be like, yo, because Nico would hype it, but Nico wouldn't be the one that he would like target. So,
Yeah.
You also have bad luck though. You're like the one who, whenever we go out to eat, they always fuck up your order, nobody
Yeah.
else's.
yeah.
So
So,
I
Yeah.
feel like you just got the bad luck.
like Alan would probably go to chop off Nico's arm, but miss and chop mine off or something like that. And then
Like,
Nico
oh,
would be like,
okay.
yo, real talk. Congratulations, Just, but my guy, I'm sorry. So,
Yeah.
and let's say, we kind of managed to overpower Alan somehow, the three of us can get out. Would you go back in and fuck him up?
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't burn the house down. I wouldn't knock him out.
I would.
fucking cut his head off, bro.
Oh my God.
Oh, true.
I guess
Bro,
that's
The only tried and true method.
Yo, real talk.
Yeah, I kind of feel like if there was like 3 of us, we could like, okay, I only got 1 arm right now, so I can only do so much, but
Bro, you can kick him.
You got
yeah, I
2
can
feet.
kick him. I stomp him out. I'd be like stomping him.
We do a fucking persona stop him out move.
Oh, the all-out attack? Just stomp him
Yeah,
out?
bro.
You know, Dan would like unsheath like a katana that's chilling in the back and chop off his head. Confirmed.
And then fireworks would go off.
And then we'd warp back to the start of the novel where we're all old men. And then Dan gets the letter saying like, come down to this recording studio, your friend Alan. And then Dan would just call us, yo, time to squat up. We got to do this dude again, yo. We got to stop him out again. One more
Chop
time.
his head off again.
But
It's
yeah,
like it, but the Benny Hill theme is playing the entire
pretty
time.
much. It's like, oh, didn't think all 3 of you would show up.
We gotta
Yep.
teach you this lesson again,
Oh,
old man.
Literally what we would do in this story. So now we're going to go ahead and move along here. So criticisms, any criticism of, this work? I think for myself personally, I really don't have too many. It's not even a criticism. I just, like Nico had said, I would love to see what they would do with Sam if she had stayed alive. I would have loved to see that. Aside from that, I really truthfully liked this. I thought it was amazing. I really did. Any criticisms from you, Dan?
I mostly liked it. I loved it. The only thing is I would like maybe a little bit more tension built up in the like middle, maybe.
Okay.
Or the second quarter, I guess, of it. Out of like a little bit more tension, a little bit more sort of like creepiness. Yeah, I loved it too.
Okay. And Nico, how about you?
I've already said my whole bit on the Hays Code, etc. So I'm just going to keep it to that and say no other criticisms. This was really fantastic.
Yes, and as a quick kind of note to anyone who's gonna, go read the comic after this, obviously this is a more mature graphic novel given the depictions of certain things that happen. There are also 1 or 2 depictions of things that, they were pretty blunt with things that happened in America in the year 1916. So, just, I guess, prepare yourself for things that you might potentially see that were honestly pretty abundant in the country at that point in time. Which again, I don't
like
hold...
an HBO special.
But again, I don't hold that against the novel for portraying what was a reality. But now we're going to go ahead and move on to our score here. Now, this is going to be one that I obviously can't pull up, this comic on Rotten Tomatoes. But on a scale from 1 to 100, where is this graphic novel sitting for you, Nico?
It's high. It's really high. I love the art style. I love the literary elements of it. I love the very real human aspect of the terror. And this is a graphic novel that really makes use of its medium, being, again, driven by pages and panels particularly fucking well. I'm going to give this a 95.
Wow.
Wow. Dan, how about you?
I would say an 86. 86 for me.
86. All right. I'm actually going to shoot this up to an 89 for me.
Wow.
So let's go. Would you recommend this one to a friend? I would.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Does this get the golden seal of approval, Nico?
Oh, in a heartbeat, yeah.
Dan?
I think so, yeah.
I say yes as well. There you go. Golden seal of approval. 2 weeks in a row.
And our first graphic novel.
First graphic novel representing the media well. Yeah, it was a great choice from the person who recommended it to us. And yeah, it was excellent. And again, that was Severed, brought to you by Scott Snyder, Scot Tuft, and Attila Futaki. So that's been it from us here at DOTD. We hope everyone is still, keep yourself safe and look out for those around you. That being said, please, ladies and gents, don't open that door. Have a great night.